Episode 1, The First Light. Every miracle in this house came with a cost. They just didn't know what they'd already paid. The house looked like a promise. White porch, faded blue shutters, an old crucifix nailed above the front door, like a forgotten amen. Rosa Rivera stood on the gravel drive with her 2 children, Mateo, age 8, and Isla, 16, watching the real estate agent struggle with the rusted lock. "You said it was blessed?" Rosa asked, her voice soft. The agent didn't turn. "It's been blessed so many times, ma'am. I'm surprised it hasn't floated into heaven." They moved in on a Thursday. The sun was kind. The walls didn't creak. Even the air smelled sweet, like the old fig trees in Rosa's grandmother's yard. For the first time in months, maybe years, Rosa let herself breathe. Isla wandered upstairs to claim the corner room. Mateo clutched his backpack, staring at the narrow hallway that led to a locked door at the end. That one storage. The agent had said, "Don't worry about it." But that night, Mateo asked, "Why is there light under the door?" Rosa looked. Nothing. No crack. No glow. Just dust. She told him it was his imagination. He didn't argue. But he didn't sleep. On the second night, Mateo woke up at 3:07 a.m. He walked barefoot down the hallway, past the crucifix that had fallen crooked, toward the locked room. And there it was again. Light. Warm. Flickering. Like candlelight from inside a church. He pressed his ear to the wood. "And he shall restore the brokenhearted, and bind up their wounds." A voice. Low. Familiar. "Dad." He knocked once. The door didn't open, but the voice stopped. "Who's in there?" Mateo whispered. Silence. Then a breath, long and slow, like someone stepping forward. "Go back to sleep, Mijo." Mateo froze. That voice didn't come through the crack. It came from behind him. He turned. No one there. Rosa found him curled up outside the door the next morning, rosary clenched in his fist. She took him downstairs, made him tea, kissed his forehead like she used to before the funeral. "You said Dad's in heaven," Mateo murmured. "But what if he came back to check on us?" Rosa smiled, lips tight. He wouldn't use a locked door. Mateo stared into the cup of tea. He was reading the Bible. That afternoon, Isla started rearranging the attic. She found something wedged between 2 beams. A photo, black and white, blurry, but unmistakable. A man in priest robes, standing in front of their house, hands raised. Behind him, a woman nailed to a wooden frame, not crucified, hung by her knees. On the back of the photo, June 3rd, 1883, first miracle declared. That night, the light returned. This time, Rosa saw it too, through the cracks, through the seams of the house. And she finally heard it, pages turning, a voice praying, and something breathing in unison. She knocked on the door. It opened, but only an inch, enough for one sentence to float through. "You brought them here, Rosa. Now, let me finish what I started." Episode 2, The Blood Bible. She opened the Bible expecting comfort. Instead, she found something breathing between the verses. It started with a knock, not on the front door, not on the bedroom wall, but inside the house itself. Rosa sat bolt upright in bed. Isla, asleep beside her, didn't stir. Mateo was still downstairs, sleeping on the couch. He refused to return to the hallway. Another knock. 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 Behind the wall. She pressed her ear to the wood. Nothing. Then, faint, like a whisper trapped inside a lung. The word was made flesh, and now the flesh remembers. At dawn, she tore the drywall open. Dust, wood, plaster, then a sound. Paper, something living beneath the boards. She dug deeper, and found it, wrapped in linen, soaked in something that had long since turned brown. A Bible, ancient, heavy, but not cold. It pulsed faintly in her hands, like it had been waiting. She opened to the final chapters. The book of Revelation was gone. In its place, the book of return, handwritten, the ink deep red. No verses, just commandments, each one marked by a small symbol she didn't recognize. A cross turned on its side, pierced through by a vine. The first line, "If the child obeys, the father may rise." Rosa's hands trembled. Another line, "To open the path, one must believe backwards." She turned the book upside down, and the words rearranged themselves. Meanwhile, downstairs, Mateo was humming, a melody Rosa didn't recognize. Isla stood frozen at the kitchen sink. "Mom," she whispered, "he's been singing in Latin since 4 a.m. Mateo turned to her. "I'm practicing," he said, eyes wide. "He wants me to be ready." Rosa crouched next to him. "Who?" Mateo tilted his head. "You said Dad's in heaven. But that Bible says if I obey, he can come back." That night, the house groaned louder. Books fell from shelves. Mirrors warped. The lights flickered, not off, but in rhythm. Morse code, 3 short, 3 long, 3 short, S-less. Isla found Rose in the attic, staring at the Bible. "Mom, we need to go." Rosa didn't answer. Instead, she showed Isla a verse she just found. New. It hadn't been there that morning. "If the mother doubts, the child will be taken." The page was wet, not ink, not water, warm, red. Suddenly, the door slammed shut. The attic light died. From below, they heard a child's voice echo up the stairs, reciting something in Latin. Not Mateo, but deeper, older, like a boy wearing a skin. Et verbum caro factum est. And the word became flesh. Rosa clutched the Bible to her chest. It was warm now, beating, like a second heart. Episode 3, The Wall That Watches. Walls don't have eyes, until they've seen too much to stay blind. Isla hadn't slept in 2 nights, not because of the dreams, but because of the feeling that she was being watched. She didn't tell her mother. Not after what happened with the Bible. Not after seeing her whisper to it, like it was something alive. Instead, Isla searched. She peeled wallpaper from the corner of her bedroom, exposing what the realtor called age-stained plaster. But it wasn't just age. It was pattern, tiny circles, perfectly bored into the wall, like pinholes. At first, she thought termites, until she realized they were all exactly eye level. She found 12 holes in her bedroom alone, 5 above her bed, 3 behind the mirror, 4 aimed directly at where she stood every morning to tie her hair. She pressed her eye to one. Darkness. Then movement. Something shifted. Not on her side. On the other. She yanked away, heart pounding. She tried another. Same thing. Shadows dancing where there should be none. And then, a breath against her eye, as if the wall had exhaled. Downstairs, Rosa read another verse from the Blood Bible. New again, written in smeared, uneven script. "If the child sees, the wall will speak." She dropped the book. It didn't hit the floor. It hovered, as if the house was catching it. That night, Isla taped over every hole in her room. Duct tape, cloth, even crosses drawn in red ink. She whispered, "You can't see me." The walls creaked, softly, patiently, like someone turning over in their sleep. At 3:03 a.m., she woke to tearing sounds. The tape had peeled itself off. Not fallen, curled, ripped, removed, and in the moonlight, every hole glowed faint gold, like tiny eyes. She screamed. The wall whispered, "We remember you." Rosa came running, but when she entered the room, the holes were gone. Just smooth plaster. No tape, no marks, no proof. Only the Bible on Isla's bed, open to a page neither had touched before. A single line carved into the paper, not written, etched. She is ready. At sunrise, Rosa found something behind the living room painting. A camera, old, connected to nothing. But when she looked through the lens, she didn't see the hallway. She saw a child's room, not theirs. Another family, another time. And in the corner of that room, a girl sat, crying, covering the walls with tape. Episode 4, The Choir in the Basement. Most churches keep their choir above ground, but this house sings from below, and it doesn't stop for breath. Rosa heard it for the first time just before dawn. A sound so soft it might have been mistaken for the wind if the wind had perfect pitch. A melody, high, thin, spoken in a language she hadn't heard since her mother's funeral. Latin. She followed the sound through the hall, past the kitchen, past Mateo's room, where he slept with his hands folded like he was waiting for something. The music grew louder near the pantry, but the pantry had no vents, no speakers, no source, just cold air brushing up from between the floorboards. She dropped to her knees and pressed her ear to the wood. That's when she heard the words. Not sung, chanted. Domini audi vocem, Navertas facium tuum a me. Lord, hear my voice. Do not turn your face from me. The boards were warm, like skin. Rosa stood. She knew the house had a basement. The agent had mentioned it once, before crossing himself. It's sealed, he had said. Not unsafe, just in use. She found the key that night, hidden inside the blood Bible, tucked between Leviticus and the Book of Return. A black iron key, cold, heavy, too ornate for something so simple. She turned it in the pantry floor. There was no click, no creak, just a sigh, like something had been waiting to exhale. And then the trapdoor opened. Dust, darkness, and a staircase that led deeper than the house should allow. Rosa descended slowly, candle in hand. The deeper she went, the clearer the voices became. Male, female, children, all singing the same line, over and over, but backwards. A Emiko by Idia Enamad. She reached the bottom and froze. The basement was a chapel, a mirror chapel of the one upstairs. Same altar, same crucifix, but everything inverted. The cross was upside down. The pews faced the walls. The stained glass depicted no saints, only a woman wrapped in barbed wire, mouth open wide as a mid-scream. The choir stood in the corner, or what was left of them, figures draped in old choir robes, faces hidden by veils. Some didn't move, some swayed to the rhythm. None had feet, just shadows where ankles should have been. Rosa stepped back, but the candle in her hand wouldn't go out. It burned sideways, toward the choir, and they turned, all at once. No eyes, no mouths, but voices still rose. They sang directly at her now, not in Latin, but in her mother's voice. Rosa Maria, tu abris la puerta, ahora escucha la oración. Rosa Maria, you open the door, now listen to the prayer. She fled up the stairs, but the candle remained lit in her hand, and the voices followed, not in sound, but in breath. She slammed the trapdoor shut, but it didn't matter, because the hymn had already moved upstairs. That night, the house sang from every wall, and Mateo whispered the words in his sleep. Domini apparuisti infernum. Lord, you have opened hell. Episode 5, The One Who Was Healed. They say the house has healed dozens, but no one asks what it took from them in return, until one of them comes back, trying to remember what he left behind. The knock came at noon. 3 slow raps on the front door. Rosa froze in the hallway, fingers still stained from the soot under the basement trapdoor. Isla opened the curtain a fraction. It's just a man. Older, worn, suit 2 sizes too big, one hand shaking slightly at his side. He smiled when the door creaked open. I'm sorry, he said, but I used to live here. Rosa didn't want to let him in. Not after the voices. Not after the mirror chapel. Not after hearing her dead mother's prayers coming from the floor. But something in his eyes. Familiar. Soft. Like someone who had been held by the house and hadn't quite let go. My name's Elias, he said. I was here 19 years ago. It cured me, but I think I left something behind. They sat in the kitchen. Mateo watched silently, chewing on the end of a pencil. Isla stood by the sink, arms crossed. Elias spoke like a man remembering a dream. I was dying, he said. Tumors in my lungs. Doctors gave me weeks. My aunt brought me here. Said the house was special. Holy. He looked down at his cup of tea. I woke up the next morning, and I could breathe like I was 17 again. The scans were clean. It was real. He looked up, eyes shimmering. But I haven't dreamt since that night. Not once. Not even bad ones. Rosa frowned. You think the house took your dreams? No, Elias whispered. I think it took my soul to pay for the healing, and now it wants me back. He reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a photo, black and white, curled edges, taken just outside the front door. A boy, maybe 16, standing beside a nun. The nun's face was scratched out, but written in red pen at the bottom. Patient number 14. Return to sender. That night, Elias insisted on sleeping in the house. I have to finish this, he said. Rosa gave him the guest room upstairs. By midnight, the walls began to whisper again, this time in English, but only one word: return. Isla awoke to the sound of humming, not from the attic, not from the basement. From Elias's room, she opened the door slowly. He stood facing the wall, eyes wide open, humming a tune that Mateo had been singing for days. On the bed, his suitcase, open, inside, a second Bible, identical to theirs. But this one had only one book left, the Book of Return. At 3:33 a.m., the humming stopped. Elias turned. His eyes were bleeding, but he was smiling. I remembered what I left, he whispered. What? Isla asked. He opened his mouth and pulled out a small object. Wet, pink, beating faintly. A piece of flesh, shaped like a tongue. He dropped it into Isla's hand. It burned, not with heat, with recognition, as if her own body remembered it. Rosa came running, but the room was already empty. Elias was gone. Only the tongue remained, and one line, scrawled across the window in reverse condensation. Healed does not mean forgiven. Episode 6, The False Apostle. The man who blessed the miracle house never wore a collar, never took a vow, never bent a knee, because the thing he worshipped didn't require forgiveness, only obedience. Rosa didn't go to the church to pray. She went to confront. Father Belden had been the parish priest for the last 22 years. He was the one who blessed the house, the one who buried the last family that lived there, the one who smiled too gently when people said the house was miraculous. He greeted her with open arms and tired eyes. Rosa, he said, is it the boy or the girl? She froze. I didn't say anything yet. He smiled again. You don't need to. The church was empty. Candles burned low. The air smelled like wax and something older, damp stone maybe, or blood that had never dried properly. Rosa sat in the second pew. Belden knelt before the altar. I need to ask you something, she said. He didn't move. I checked the diocesan records. There's no Father Belden assigned to this parish. Not now. Not ever. Silence. Then, slowly he rose. His eyes weren't tired anymore. They were bright. Do you know what the church does when it finds something it can't explain? Rosa didn't answer. They rename it, he said. They put it in Latin. They lock in the room. Or worse, they call it a miracle. He reached beneath the altar and pulled out a wooden box. Inside, an old chalice, but not gold, bone, polished smooth, etched with words not meant to be read aloud. This, he said, was found in your basement before the floor was sealed. Rosa stared. You knew what was under that house. He nodded. I served what was under that house. He opened the Bible on the altar, but it wasn't a Bible. Not anymore. Every page had been replaced with parchment, each covered in black ink, written in circles, spirals, never in straight lines. At the center of the book, a sigil, identical to the one burned into the Book of Return. A cross, pierced by vines. You call a heresy, Belden said, but we call it a hope. Rosa stood. What did you worship? He turned to her, smiling wider now. Not who, but what? The one who listens when God turns his back. She stepped backward. What do you want from my family? He closed the book. It's not about wanting. It's about returning. Your son was chosen because he listens. Back at the house, Mateo had drawn something on the living room wall. A spiral, endless, drawn with both hands at once. When Rosa returned, he looked up and smiled. Father Belden says I have the right ears now, he said. Rosa fell to her knees. There, beneath the spiral, was a word carved into the plaster, with a knife. Lucifer? No, she looked closer. Not Lucifer, Luciferae. Latin, bearer of light. And from beneath the floorboards, the house began to hum. Episode 7. The baptism that burned. Some baptisms cleanse the soul. Others invite something new inside. And some simply burn away what was never supposed to be there. Mateo woke at 2:13 a.m. His voice was not his own. Rosa found him in the kitchen, sitting in a pool of cold candle wax, chanting a verse that wasn't in any Bible she had ever read. Et lux facta est, said Nonadeo, and light was made but not by God. She scooped him into her arms, shaking, whispering his name. He blinked slowly, then smiled. I'm ready, he said, for the baptism. The next morning, he wouldn't eat, wouldn't speak, just sat on the porch, watching the old bird bath in the garden. The one Rosa had always hated. Cracked, moss-covered, a hollow thing meant to hold something holy. He whispered to Isla as she walked past. That's where it will happen. At 7:41 tonight. Same minute Dad died. Rosa tried to forbid it, tried to lock the back door, tried to pray. But the blood Bible opened itself on the kitchen table, flipped to a blank page. And then, slowly, words began to appear, written in her own handwriting. If the son bathes in memory, the father returns in fire. That evening, the wind died. Even the house seemed to hold its breath. Mateo stripped off his clothes, folded them carefully, and stepped into the bird bath. Too small for a boy, but somehow he fit. Water rose, dark and thick. Not water. Oil. Rosa ran outside just as the candles lit themselves in a perfect ring around him. Mateo tilted his head to the sky. The moon turned red. Isla screamed from the porch. The fire alarms in the house blared, but there was no fire, only smoke seeping from the walls. Not gray, not black, white, like incense, like ritual. Mateo began to float. Not high, just enough for the oil to slip from his skin. His body shimmered like glass. He whispered, "He's coming through me." And then the oil ignited. Flames rose, but they didn't burn. They danced, bent backward, formed the outline of a man, tall, faceless. Crowned with thorns turned inward. Rosa screamed and reached for her son. The flames vanished. Mateo collapsed, slick and breathless. Eyes open, mouth smiling. He sat up, spoke one sentence. I remember the day I died. That night, Rosa found a letter on her pillow. Old parchment, signed by Father Belden. One line, baptism is not rebirth, only admission. Episode 8, the room that didn't exist. Every house has secrets, but some don't stay buried. Some are built into the walls. It began with a draft, a breeze Isla couldn't place, brushing her ankles every time she passed the upstairs hallway. The hallway had always had 3 doors. Her room, Mateo's room, the linen closet. But on the 8th night, there was a 4th, right between hers and Mateo's. Same paint, same doorknob, no lock. She asked Rosa. Her mother stared blankly. There's always been 3. Mateo shrugged. I think I dreamed about that door. At midnight, Isla opened it. The room beyond was small, square, perfectly clean, wallpaper yellowing with daisies, a white crib in the corner, mobile above it, slowly turning, though there was no wind. The walls were lined with framed photos, babies, dozens of them, but every face was scratched out. She stepped in, and the door shut behind her. No one else saw the door the next morning. Not Rosa, not Mateo. Even the wall was smooth again, like it had never been disturbed. But Isla had proof in her hand, a silver rattle, cold and humming faintly, and on the side, engraved in perfect script, for Isla, in case she returns. That night, she returned to the hallway, and the door was back, waiting. She entered with a flashlight. The photos were the same, except now, One of them showed a girl who looked just like her, sitting in the crib, wearing a baptism gown. And next to the photo, a small plaque, room 4, occupant removed, memory extracted. She turned to run, but the door had vanished again. The crib creaked behind her. She turned slowly. The mobile spun faster. The same nursery rhyme played in reverse. Twinkle, twinkle, little, but the words bled together, and then stopped. A voice whispered from inside the crib. I remember you. The light flickered. Isla stepped forward. The crib was empty, but the blanket was embroidered. Isla Rivera, born 2013, died 2013. Reclaimed. She screamed. The door reappeared. She fled. But when she told Rosa, her mother dropped the glass in her hand. You were born in 2007. Isla froze. I know that. Rosa whispered. No, Isla, you died. Episode 9, The Angel's Teeth. He said it was beautiful. Wings of light, a voice like bells, and a face that smiled with kindness. But when he leaned in, he saw the mouth wasn't closed. It was chewing. Mateo stopped speaking after the 9th night. He didn't cry, didn't sleep, didn't flinch when Rosa held him. He just stared at the ceiling, whispering the same word under his breath. Arcadio. Rosa had never heard the name. Neither had Isla, but the Blood Bible knew. That night, when she opened it, a new page had grown where nothing had been. A single line. Arcadio, the angel of second deaths. At 3:11 a.m., Rosa woke to a strange sound. A soft grinding. Like teeth. Mateo stood at the foot of her bed, smiling, but not looking at her. Looking at something behind her. She turned and saw nothing, but the window was open, and the curtains fluttered inward. The next day, Isla found drawings in Mateo's notebook. Dozens of them. All the same. A figure with wings, so wide they tore through the corners of the page. Its face was blank, except the mouth. Rows and rows of teeth. Sharp, square, too human. And in every drawing, those teeth were chewing. That night, Mateo spoke for the first time. To Rosa, I saw an angel, he said. He sat on the end of my bed. She tried to smile. Did he say anything? Mateo nodded. He said he was hungry. Rosa opened the Bible again. This time, the ink dripped, not red, white, milk-colored, like old bones ground into water. The page read, Arcadiel is not summoned by prayer. He is attracted by faith that is losing shape. The house grew colder. Mateo's breath fogged in warm air. He kept staring at corners. Not windows, not doors, corners, as if something waited there, as if teeth waited there. At 3:33 a.m., the alarms went off. Smoke, but no fire. Rosa ran into Mateo's room. He was gone. She followed footprints, bare, small, down the hall, through the kitchen to the pantry. The trap door to the basement was open, and the humming had returned. A low, rich tone, not like the choir from before. Lower, hungrier. Rosa climbed down. The mirror chapel pulsed with soft gold light. At the altar, Mateo stood barefoot, and above him, a figure, towering, wings folded like broken bone, eyes glowing faint, and a mouth that moved constantly, but made no sound, until Rosa screamed. Then it turned, smiled, and she saw it wasn't chewing with hunger. It was chewing with memory, as if remembering the taste of souls it had taken before. It whispered, your son believed. Now he belongs. Rosa rushed forward, but the angel vanished in smoke. Mateo collapsed, and when Rosa caught him, he whispered one word. Again. Episode 10, The Book of Return. Not every book is meant to be finished. Some are meant to wait, to bleed, to remember the names of those who should never have come back. Isla didn't sleep after the angel, not because of what Mateo saw, but because she started to hear the house call her name, not through walls, through pages. One night, when the Blood Bible lay open on the kitchen table, a whisper bled from the spine. Read me. She flipped to the end. The pages became thicker, stiffer, until she touched something not paper. Flesh, a single page, pale, warm, stitched to the binding like it had grown there, veined, still alive. At the top, embossed in burned lettering, the Book of Return. Not a chapter, a title. The text began, "For those who are ready to trade light for presence. For those who cannot forget the dead. For those who wish to bring them home." And then, nothing, a blank space. At the bottom, the final verse must be written by the hand that mourns. Rosa begged her not to touch it, but Isla had already seen her own name written in a dozen places that no one else remembered. She didn't want to bring anyone back. She just wanted to know if she had ever really died. She took a knife from the kitchen, pricked her finger, let the blood drop onto the page. The skin soaked it in like wine. And then words appeared, but they weren't hers. They came fast, scrawled, as if someone on the other side was writing back. "You are the final gate. You are the empty womb. And your blood remembers what your mind does not." That night, the cradle in a room that didn't exist began to rock on its own. Isla returned. This time, the walls were covered in writing, all the same sentence, in dozens of languages. We returned through her. She opened the closet, found a dress, tiny, lace-trimmed, embroidered with her name and a date. Isla Rivera, stillborn 2013. She ran downstairs, but the Bible had changed. It no longer had pages, only a mirror bound inside its cover. And when she looked into it, she didn't see herself. She saw her mother, pregnant, alone, in this house, screaming. As someone whispered, "We can save her, but only if she forgets this ever happened." Isla dropped the book. It didn't fall. It clung to her hand, flesh against flesh. A heartbeat thudded from the cover. Rosa burst into the room. Isla turned to her, eyes glowing, voice trembling. "I think I'm the one they brought back." Episode 11. The crosses turned black. They thought the house was blessed. But blessings don't rot wood. Don't turn holy water to steam. Don't ask you to choose who gets to keep their soul. It started with a smell, burnt metal, ash, something like a storm about to break. Rosa found the first crucifix blackened above the kitchen door, its silver now dull, warped. At first, she thought it had fallen into the fire, but when she touched it, it crumbled into dust in her hands. She ran through the house. Every crucifix, black, every rosary, twisted. The holy water by the front door was boiling. Isla awoke to writing on her mirror. Not fog, not marker, carved. One soul must be paid in full. Choose. The blood on the edge of the glass was still wet, but it wasn't hers. Mateo had gone silent again. He stood in the living room, facing the wall, whispering. They said I'm clean now. They said I'm not mine anymore. Isla begged him to look at her. He did, and his eyes were all pupil, black, widening, reflecting a shape standing behind her. That night, the blood Bible lit itself on fire. No flame, no heat, just the sound of pages turning faster than hands could move. It stopped on a page no one had seen before. There was only a list, dozens of names, crossed out one by one. All but three: Mateo Rivera, Isla Rivera, Rosa Rivera, and at the bottom, the house must be paid. Only one may stay whole. Rosa fell to her knees, screamed at the walls, at the altar beneath their feet, at the cross that no longer hung above the fireplace. This was a place of healing, and the house answered. Through Mateo, his mouth opened, his voice deeper, older. It still is, but healing demands an offering. The floorboards split. From beneath them, black vines rose, wrapped in rosary beads. Each bead burned red like a dying ember. They circled Rosa, Isla, Mateo, 3 halos of smoke, and the voice returned. This time, from every mirror in the house, one must be returned. One must stay behind. One must carry the memory. The lights blew out. The Bible slammed shut. The crosses melted. and at the center of the living room floor, a symbol began to carve itself. A spiral of ash. Waiting, breathing, hungry. Isla stared at her mother. Rosa stared at her son. Mateo stared at the ceiling, whispering, "I already died once. I don't mind doing it again." Episode 12. The revelation that was erased. History remembers the saints. The church honors the martyrs. But some names were never meant to survive the page. Some were erased not for what they did, but for who they served. The wall behind the altar had always felt wrong. Isla had stood there 100 times, but never close, never long, never brave enough to touch it. Until that night, the spiral on the floor still glowed, pulsing like a second heartbeat. The Bible had gone silent. Mateo had fallen asleep mid-whisper, and Rosa sat beside the fire, staring at a cross that no longer hung. Isla pressed her hand against the altar wall, and it gave way, soft as breath. Behind the plaster, a hollow space. Inside it, a scroll, old, wrapped in cloth that had once been white, now yellowed by centuries of secrecy. No dust, just reverence, like something had been tending to it even now. She unrolled it by candlelight. No title, no saint's name, no seal of Rome, only handwriting so sharp it looked carved, not inked. At the top, this is the gospel they erased. The scroll spoke of a man, a preacher, born nameless, healed the sick not by prayer, but by taking their sickness into himself. Each time he saved a soul, a piece of him rotted. His skin blistered, his bones thinned, his voice grew stranger, until it no longer echoed in churches, but in wells. Villagers called him the Hallowed. He didn't speak of God. He spoke of a light beneath the earth, a warmth older than Genesis, a covenant never written, but always remembered. When Rome came, they tried to crucify him, but the wood split, the nails bent, and the birds gathered to sing. So instead, they built a house around him, not a tomb, a temple. Isla's hands trembled. Her name was on the scroll, written in the margins, next to the phrase, "The first child that returned." She dropped it. It didn't fall. It folded itself closed. Downstairs, the spiral of ash began to spin. Slow, then faster. Mateo awoke, gasping. "They're coming," he whispered. The congregation, the ones who followed him down. Rosa rushed to Isla's side, saw the scroll, saw the words shifting, ink realigning as if erased names were being restored. She read one aloud, not in English, not in Latin, something before Latin. The house shuddered, and the wall cracked. A new chamber appeared, hidden beneath the altar, and inside, a throne, empty, made of bone and broken mirrors. Above it, a painting scorched into the ceiling, not of Christ, but of the hallowed one, mouth open, arms out, flesh unraveling into light, and around him, choirs without eyes, wings without feathers, tongues writing gospel in flame. Isla looked at her mother. "Was I born here?" Rosa said nothing, just wept, and the scroll whispered, "Return is not resurrection. It is continuation." Episode 13. The house that ate prayers. They prayed for healing. They begged for light. But in the end, the house didn't listen. It fed. The final night began with silence. Not absence, but compression. Like the house had sucked all the breath from its lungs to make space for something else. Rosa lit every candle. They went out. Mateo closed his eyes, didn't open them again, and Isla stood in front of the scroll, the one she had bled on, the one that spoke her name before she was ever born. She read the last line aloud. One must stay behind, to remember, to bear the gospel. The page curled in her hands like it wept. Footsteps echoed through the walls. Not human, not beast, just coming from beneath the house, from the rooms that shouldn't exist, from the chapel without saints. They were not angels. They were witnesses, made of ash and parchment, mouths stitched shut, hands stained with blessings they could never return. They surrounded the family in the living room, and the spiral began to spin, Not in ash this time, but in light. Rosa took Isla's hand. "I made a deal," she whispered. Isla shook her head. "No." But Rosa smiled. "Sad. Sure, I wasn't supposed to keep you. They let me for a price." She turned to the altar, raised her arms, and the house opened, like a lung releasing its final prayer. The wind screamed. The throne beneath the altar filled with flame, and Rosa stepped forward. Mateo screamed for her. The choir returned, their voices not in song, but in scripture written aloud. Rosa climbed the final stair and knelt before the throne of the hallowed. She placed her hand on its arm and whispered, "You can have me, but leave them whole." The throne swallowed her, not in fire, in light, and when it vanished, the house exhaled, and the spiral stopped spinning. In the morning, the house was empty, no doors, no walls, just stone, charred, cracked, still humming like an unfinished song. Isla and Mateo stood in the yard, the scroll in her hands. Still warm, still alive. She opened it. There was one new line, written in her own handwriting, though she had never held a pen. And so she became the prayer. Mateo looked up. "What do we do now?" Isla folded the scroll, held it to her chest, and smiled through tears. "We walk." Where? She looked back at the ruins. Anywhere that listens.